Hi guys, I'm back again, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be talking about a topic that is really not something you've probably heard before, but it is quite interesting. So this is going to be strength and conditioning, fitness and exercise related, and we're going to be going through how vision loss and eventually how total blindness can affect someone's training. So to set the stage a little bit, for anyone who doesn't know, I was a Great Britain judo athlete for almost 10 years, and throughout that time I was suffering from vision deterioration. So I was born with quite a severe visual impairment, and just before I turned 20 I started noticing that I couldn't read, I couldn't see quite as well to get around, all that sort of stuff. And by the time I was 25 I became completely blind, and this was all during my judo career. So I had to learn a lot about vision loss and about how the body reacts to vision loss, and I had to become really quite up on biomechanics, proprioception, motor learning, and how that affects someone in that situation in order to just rebuild my own personal fitness and strength. So there's going to be quite a lot of lessons in here that can be transferred to probably everybody's training. It doesn't have to be vision loss, but I think it's an interesting topic and it creates a few unique challenges that are definitely quite interesting to talk about. So I hope you enjoy the video. So I think the first thing we need to look at when it comes to vision loss is balance, coordination and proprioception. So for ease, I've just lumped them all together because they do interact with each other quite heavily. So when someone who can see fully or can see enough is doing any kind of activity, whether it's just simply walking up and down the stairs, jumping over a hurdle, running, lifting weights, doing squats, anything like that, you get a lot of information from your environment visually, and that information makes up probably more than 75% of the stimulus that allows your body to maintain its balance, coordination and proprioception. So when this function becomes impaired, your brain struggles to fill in those gaps, which is where we have balance problems, coordination problems, movement issues and compensations occurring maybe when you don't even realize it. So some examples from my perspective. Mine was quite serious to start with, my vision. So as soon as it started deteriorating, it was obviously quite noticeable immediately. I would put a barbell on my back to do, a high barbell squat, something that I'm not the strongest person in the world, but something that I could do competently before. And I would go to do it. As soon as I'd take the bar off the rack and step backwards, I would feel instantly pretty ill, pretty dizzy, because I don't know where I am and I'm walking with a weight. And I get myself into my position eventually, and I do my squat, and all the way down the squat I would feel like I'm basically gonna die. I'm gonna fall on my face, or I don't know what's going on. This is a big anxiety-inducing event, as you can imagine, but it is explained by the reduction in vision and the impairment of the brain in terms of the ability to compensate for that. It's a hard adaptation to get, and it takes a long time, and that can happen, as you can tell, with very basic exercises. So that was not a unilateral one-legged exercise. That was a two-legged, relatively stable exercise that I was good at before. Another example was the bench press. I kind of had the same problem. Every time I'd have a bit of a deterioration in vision, I would take the bar off the rack, and instantly I could feel the bar wobbling and moving from side to side, backwards and forwards. And no, that wasn't a strength problem for me. That was something that I could do absolutely fine before. But as soon as I had a deterioration, that was it. The motor control was completely off. So what we need to look at is how do we deal with this? So for anyone who is actually going through vision loss, I think you need to understand this is a long game, and it's about practice and intense repetitions, obviously not overtraining or anything. If your sighted peers do something 10 times, you need to kind of do it 100 times, in my opinion, for you to get the same benefit. Once you've got a movement, you've got it. But if you have a deterioration in vision, this stuff can happen. It's good to be aware of the effects. Now, I think some really, really good counters to this is teaching people, vision loss or not, and this is where it comes on to things that everyone can use, is teaching people how to move effectively through a controlled full range of motion. So we'll take the squat example. Getting out the rack, getting yourself straight. I put 2 thick mats behind me so my heels touch the mats and I know exactly where I'm stepping, which takes away that anxiety for me mostly. I can squat all the way down until my calves and hamstrings touch with a straight back, and that for me is an essential thing, because that's my tactile cue to know that I'm in a straight line, both legs are touching at exactly the same time, my back is straight, I can feel my shoulders pinching together at the back, and I can feel that the bar is straight. And when I push up and stand up out of the squat, I can feel that straight line movement up and down. Whereas if you don't have that full range of motion strength and that mobility to do that, that needs to be a priority for you, because if you're only relying on feel, if you haven't got the muscular strength and and the stability and the ability to move in these positions, that's your, if you're blind, that's your only sense of awareness. So building that is absolutely essential before you do anything else. So even if you have to do body weight squats, no weight, just your own body weight, and you have to learn how to hold the bottom position, you need to do wall sits, you need to do all this kind of stuff. This is what you need to do, definitely, and it will benefit you in the long run because you'll have a better physical awareness of where your body is in space. The same goes for your bench pressing and for your overhead pressing, pull-ups, anything else that you can imagine. The same principle applies. Range of motion and control under the maximum, the hardest ranges of motion is absolutely key. When you bring your barbell down to your chest on the bench press, when it touches your chest, you're not hitting your chest, but when it just brushes your chest, you can feel that barbell is lined up properly and centered, and you can be confident in your ability to execute the movement. So those are some basic things in terms of bilateral exercises and building some basic capacity. You can obviously do glute bridges and all sorts of other stuff. Obviously, I'll leave everybody to do their own programs with that sort of thing, because it'll take all day. But basic things first. There's no point trying to get someone to do one-legged exercises, Bulgarian split squats, jumping over hurdles or anything like that until they can do these basic movements, because especially if someone's blind or losing the vision, it's going to be difficult for them to be able to do that, and it's going to cause frustration, and they're not going to want to do it. So that's a pathway to getting people moving properly. So next I'll just go into some information about balance and unilateral exercises. So when we're looking at balance and unilateral exercises, we're assuming that we're working on these core capacities, building bilateral strength through a full range of motion, maybe varying stance widths, grip widths, tempo, all this sort of stuff. But when we're starting to build some of that, then we can start looking at unilateral movements. And for a blind person, this will probably feel quite daunting if they've never done it before, or if they're losing their vision. This could feel pretty scary. So I think it's important that we start off with just single leg balancing exercises to get them used to standing on one leg. I remember that there was a time when I could stand on one leg for minutes and minutes at a time, and then when I started losing my vision, I couldn't stand on one leg for 10 seconds, and it was extremely annoying considering where I was before. And every time I rebuilt that skill, I had a deterioration in vision, and I had to basically start again. So I think what we need to look at is unilateral movements in terms of progression and keeping someone moving, and being able to regress the movement if necessary. Again, if you're an able-bodied person and you're doing this is probably not going to be as relevant. But if someone loses a bit of vision, for example, and they've just worked up to standing on one leg for 25 seconds and that happens, they might need to do assisted one-legged stands again. And it's just about acknowledging that and just understanding that that's not that person's physical issue. That is to do with something that is completely outside of their control. But in terms of progression, we want to look at static movements first. So like I said, one leg, and then you want to look at introducing just a little bit of chaos, so a little bit of movement. This might be moving the free leg, so you might just move the free leg from side to side ever so slightly. You might want to start off with very, very small movements. You may even do it assisted. You can move your arms in circles, for example. It just introduces that proprioceptive control that is so important when you're not able to see the environment around you, and you can feel your movement through space. And I think teaching people proper mechanics of standing on one leg. So you don't want to stand on one leg with your hips sat back, sticking out behind you. You want your knee bent, you want to be relatively upright, and you want to be, your weight needs to be over your midfoot. And teaching someone to understand what that feels like is going to be really important for allowing them to be able to build that skill going forward themselves. So if you don't know how to stand, if the person doesn't understand what weight over the midfoot feels like, and having a bit of hip extension and a slight bend in the knee rather than being bent over and having your hips sticking out behind you, they're going to keep falling over, and they're not going to be able to understand why, because they can't see you doing that. So they're not going to be able to pick up that cue, even though it's very simple. So obviously progressions, once you've introduced a bit of chaos, and once someone can sort of maintain a bit of balance when there's a bit of arm movement or leg movement involved, you can then probably move on to things like lunges and split squats and things like that. Now, it's up to you where you put the lunges, because back lunges, for example, will be significantly easier than a forward lunge, but both will be helpful in terms of building that person's ability to understand movement in all different planes, not just sort of, standing on one leg. You can also utilize side lunges. I think also they're called Cossack squats as well. This is like really wide legs. You're sitting down to one side and then sitting down to the other side. That's great for balance and hip mobility. And eventually when you come to do split squats, this will be a step up. So you do split squats probably first with your foot just on the floor behind you, not on a bench. And once someone can reliably do that properly, maybe with a little bit of load, you can then introduce a bench and do Bulgarian split squats. Bulgarian split squats are extremely hard when you can't see. Believe me, I do them, and it tests me every single time. But it is one of those absolute, crazy exercises where it builds so much strength, so much stability, and especially if you're visually impaired or blind, that stuff is really, really valuable to you. So yeah, that's just balance, coordination, and proprioception. I hope that's interesting, because there's lessons that can be taken to everyone's training there, progression. But I think if you're a coach watching this and you maybe work with a visually impaired person, it might be an older person, it could be anybody, younger person as well. These are some things you need to keep in mind, that it could be a very fluctuating situation, and you need to be patient and allow that person to explore movement in as many different ways as possible, and just don't be sticking to one form of training, because vision loss is a very individual experience. The adaptations to it are going to be very individual as well. Like, remember, the brain is not supposed to function without vision, so the adaptations are going to be pretty different from person to person, and at different speeds as well. So I'm quite passionate about this, guys, because this is something that I've struggled with a lot, and there's not a lot of research on this on this topic, and I think that it's an under-discussed issue. Obviously, vision loss to this extent is quite rare. I also think there's quite a lot of things in here that are useful for people, regardless of their training status and disability. You could be able-bodied, and training with a full range of motion and building yourself up from there is not a bad idea. But for people with vision loss, this is absolutely, in my opinion, going to be the most essential thing for you going forward. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. It's a bit of a waffle, but it's just some personal experiences and personal insights onto training with vision loss. And I've been doing that now I'm 30 now, and my vision loss started 10 years ago, and I'm still learning how to do it. I've been totally blind for 5 years as well. So, you know, I'm still learning, and, you know, I thought I'd share some of that with you guys. So I hope you guys have enjoyed me waffling on. It's not been the most coherent video, but I hope it's useful. Thank you, guys.